Alright, so we got some optimal NES music playing in the background now, so we in there. Alright, so...
And those who are listening to the post-recording, if you want to hear the music live, tune into... Oh, well, it can also... Your version can also be uploaded to you.
That is also true. Whichever works, rather. Okay, so... to start things off, So I didn't get to play... Of course, the NES came out in the 80s. But, of course, I wasn't born in the 80s. I'm a 90s kid, 1992 to be exact. And I actually didn't touch the NES first. I actually touched the Super Nintendo. That was the first console I played. But my parents happened to have an NES around, and I managed to be able to play the NES. I think we had about like almost every game Angry Video Game Nerd went over in his videos. I think we pretty much kind of had back then, funny enough. Except for like Mega Man. For some reason we didn't have Mega Man. Like, how could you not have Mega Man? I'm the Mega Man guy. It doesn't make sense. No, I'm joking. But yeah, for some reason I didn't have that. So I didn't get to experience that game, but I did get to play like a lot of old school retro games. I got to play like we had the OG freaking classic Mario / Duck Hunt Dog mixed cartridge thing. We had the freaking we had the Olympic game that came with the pad, the little pad with the buttons on it and shit.
Oh, track and field.
Yes. Oh, that game was so much fun. We had that. Like, that was the OG DDR. We did have that. We had the little NZAP. We had that. I remember that. We didn't have the Power Glove. I don't think we had the Power Glove. We might have.
It's fine. Because from what I heard, it's so bad.
One of my most memorable games from playing the NES was definitely the Ninja Turtles. Looking back at it, when I was watching Angry Video Game Nerd play it, he hated it. I don't remember the game being that bad when I played it though. I actually enjoyed it, especially with me, you know, being a Ninja Turtles fan. Any kid in the 90s probably a Ninja Turtle fan for the most part. I really enjoyed that game. It was very explorative. You know, the world map when you're in the tank was really dope. The NES in general is just so cool. Despite me having a Super Nintendo right in front of me with, I believe it has 16-bit graphics, correct? Yeah, like, and you know, in this fidelity that it had, the NES to me still felt good to play on. Like, the button, you only had two executable buttons at the time, aside from, you know, start, and I think, if I can't remember, I think it may have had a select button on it. I'm going based off memory here. Okay, it did. Okay, yeah, I remember those. I remember playing the classic Mario game, the OG Mario. I remember playing that game, getting terrified fighting against Bowser. Or even going to his castle at all, because that freaking music would play, that terrifying ass music would play when I'm shooting the fire, and you're just wondering, like, dude, because it's crazy when you're a kid, right, and you're playing a game and you don't understand how these things work. You don't understand like progression and the narrative they're trying to push with the game. It's like, you're in your happy-go-lucky world, 1-1, you're running around, yeah, and then you get to the flag. The next stage, you're you know, you go into this pipe, like, wait, I'm still in World 1, aren't I? What's going on? You go into the pipe, now you're in this weird cave area, you're underground, it's playing that kind of weird ass music or whatever, so you know, you're roaming around. I discovered that pipe area earlier than I should have, and I managed to go in there, and I ended up in Bowser's stage, in Bowser's castle or whatever. And I was like, huh, this stage is weird, this music is very scary, there's fire shooting out of nowhere, I don't understand what's going on. What's even doing this? You know what I'm saying? After dying a million times, having to restart a bunch of times, I finally figured out that it was Bowser. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, holy shit, Bowser is insane. This kid, like this dragon turtle thing is scary. And I had to get to that. That axe on the other side. I saw the axe, and I wasn't sure what to do at first. I tried to jump on him, and I died. I tried shooting fire flowers at him. That shit didn't work. I was like, man, I don't know what to do. So eventually, I just ran under him and hit the axe, and he died. And that was just such an amazing feat to me. I feel like a lot of people give NES games a lot of flack because they're pretty difficult, but I feel like a lot of them paved the way for video games as we know them now. You know what I'm saying? A lot of the tropes that we see in video games to this day actually built its foundation from the roadmap that the NES kind of left. So it was amazing times. I remember DuckTales. DuckTales was amazing. All those games were pretty neat. So.
Yeah, it's definitely well, taking it one step at a time too. Like I could have sworn there were like multiple Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games, because one of them I distinctly remember playing with my brother and like I think one of our grandparents, like neighbors, back when we used to visit them in Jamaica, was that we played a beat 'em up Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game where it was 2 players, and we always had trouble trying to. Yeah, that was the good.
That was a good one.
And we always had trouble trying to beat Shredder.
Yeah.
But then when they released Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the Virtual Console, I downloaded it thinking it was the one that I enjoyed. But then there was also a 2D platformer one, which apparently that one's the less good.
That 2D platformer one was probably the NES one. The beat 'em up one was on the Super Nintendo, if I'm looking correctly here. I'm looking it up now. And it looks like, yeah, that Super Nintendo one was on the NES. Not the Super Nintendo. I mean, the beat 'em up was on the Super Nintendo.
Well, that's the other thing too, because I thought like the Turtles in Time was definitely on the Super Nintendo, but I could have sworn, because there were 2 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle beat 'em ups in the arcades, and both of their console ports were, ported versions of the arcade version. But I could have sworn that like Turtles in Time showed up on the Super Nintendo, while the very first one showed up on the NES.
It may have, but I'm looking it up now. I see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game. This is probably the one you're referring to. This is the one that popped up when I typed it in. Yeah, and it is on the NES. It's on the NES thing here. So this may have been it then. It may have been a ported version of that arcade game, which may be why it didn't pop up at first.
Yeah.
I need to play that one.
Yeah, this is the one that I do remember, and like we always had trouble like getting to the Shredder, and I forget whether or not we actually beat the game, but yeah, that's definitely the better one of the 2 that showed up on the NES. But I'm trying to remember a lot of my history with it, because like as I've always told you, like my true awakening with video games never really happened until like around the GameCube era. Up until that point, like the games, I pretty much just kind of played what was in front of me, and I knew what I liked. So like for as long as I could remember, an NES system was just in our house. I don't remember. I'm not one of those kids that unfortunately has a memory of like, I remember the day that when my mom came home with an NES system. Like from what I can remember, was just always there.
That's how it was for me too. Actually, it was already there when I got there too.
It's just, yeah. I was trying to think of a joke, but like I got that.
I was gonna say that I'm looking through some games here. Oh no, you go ahead and finish. My bad.
Well, you can go into it so I can collect my thoughts a little.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So while you're loading, I was gonna say that we also had Tetris. I'll never forget Tetris, dude. That game used to kick my ass, but the music was so good in Tetris back then, bro. Oh my god, Tetris was so good. The music was good. Even for me to be like a 5 or 6 year old, you'd think my attention span would be like, wouldn't hold up enough to play a game like Tetris, like a puzzle game. But I guess like maybe the music and the colorful aesthetic just appealed to me at the time. I remember my sister was really good at that game, and she made it like really far in it, and I like watching her play that. I think we had the OG Zelda, but I didn't play that game because it was creepy. We also had Metroid. I remember playing the crap out of that game. Metroid was very interesting. A lot of the main classics that we love to this day, or IPs rather, started off on the NES. So something really. Oh, this song that's playing right now, you guys can hear it. It's actually Monopoly that's playing right now. We had the OG Monopoly game, and I remember always picking the dog, I think. On that game was really fun too, actually. I hate Monopoly the board game, but for some reason the video game version was actually really fun. We had like pretty much all. I'm looking through the list of classics in the catalog right now. We had basically all these games. My parents were avid gamers before I came around. My parents were big time gamers, so they had all this shit basically already. Funny enough, I ended up buying an NES game by the time the GameCube / Game Boy Advance was relevant. So this is like almost 3 consoles later, 3 or 4, almost 4 consoles later. I ended up getting a hold of a NES game. So basically Kirby Nightmare Dreamland was coming out on the Game Boy Advance, and I'll get more into that when we get to the Game Boy Advance section of things. And the I remember I went to a flea market and I remember I was so hyped for the game, and you know, I think the anime was announced, or it may have been out, or maybe coming out. So I was in this big Kirby craze at the time, and I was like, man, I gotta get a hold of a Kirby game. And like at the flea market, they had Kirby's Adventure, and I'm like, well, we got it. Like basically every year, my parents would pull out the NES, would blow the dust off that bitch and plug it up and play it. And like, speaking of blowing the dust off of it, I'm sure anybody who's owned, who had a Super Nintendo, a Super Nintendo, NES, anything that involved a cartridge back then. I know you guys remember the old blowing in the cartridge thing. I almost died doing that. Or I feel like I almost died. I got dizzy blowing into that shit, trying to get one of my games up. But I'll definitely say that I remember getting that Kirby's Adventure cartridge there and putting it in and playing the shit out that game. That game was amazing, dude. And by this time, I think we're like damn near close to the GameCube era of things, or minimally we're still in that in-between phase with the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube. And it was, oh my gosh, dude, that game was so good. I beat that game like at least 3 or 4 times, only for me to find out that the Game Boy Advance version, which is Nightmare Dreamland, was just an upscale version of that. I was kind of disappointed, and I thought it was kind of cool at the same time, though. But did you have anything you wanted to chime in on?
Well, as far as like Kirby's Adventure, I was, again, because like you know, I wasn't truly knowledgeable of a lot of video games at the time. I kind of thought that like Kirby Superstar was like one of the like first real Kirby games, aside from like maybe whatever showed up on the Game Boy. Yeah. And I had no idea Kirby's Adventure ever existed, but I also kind of didn't know how busted Kirby's Adventure was. That like you can copy. Wait, no. Could you get copy abilities in the original?
You could, yes. In Kirby, no, all right. In the first Kirby on the Game Boy, that was the actual first Kirby game. You couldn't in that one. I think that was Kirby's Dream Land. You couldn't in that one. But in Kirby's Adventure, you could get the abilities, but you couldn't. The thing on that is you didn't get in the hats or whatever. You didn't change colors either. You just ate people and had the power.
And because like touching Kirby's Adventure happened after playing Kirby Superstar, I thought it was kind of dumb that like it felt like a lot of the times one hit and you would lose your ability, where you'd have to chase down your star and like get it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in like Kirby Superstar, it seemed like there was like kind of a threshold you'd have to reach, whether you got hit multiple times or took a really, really strong hit to lose your ability.
Right.
So that was, it's sometimes funny, like kind of going backwards, but it also makes the unfortunate case that like when you play updated version, it kind of feels like there's less of a reason to go back to the classics aside from, you know, quote unquote appreciating the classics.
Right.
Yeah. And like, so it does depend on what the NES game is, where it's like kind of easier to get into or not. Like, I think it's easier to get into Super Mario Brothers 3 than it is to play Super Mario Brothers 2. Just because of the quality of life, the ability to do stage select, the fact that I think the game saves. No, I don't think it's saved.
Yeah, I know Mega Man had password systems, but that's like as close as you get. Most of the games you had to beat them shits in like one go.
Yeah, that's true. I guess going back into like the memory at the beginning of it though, like most of the games I can remember is that I know we did have the Mario/Duck Hunt cartridge. We did have the Zapper for a little while. What else did we have? We unfortunately never owned Track and Field. I know we had Mario Brothers 2 and Mario Brothers 3. God, I wish we didn't sell our NES.
You know, I didn't even have the OG versions of those. I think we had OG Mario Brothers 3 maybe, but I ended up getting introduced to all the other classic Mario games via Mario All-Stars on the Super Nintendo, funny enough.
That's not a bad way to get into it either. But yeah, like unfortunately, like I never knew much about Metroid. I don't think we had Zelda. Like I don't think we had a golden cartridge where the original Zelda was on, but I think we did have some game with a golden label. But that's the thing, like unless it was a cartoony character, I just wasn't that invested in it at that time. Oddly enough, I think I was more of a Sega kid at the time than a Nintendo kid at that specific time. But we'll probably be talking about the Sega Genesis another day.
Yeah, more likely.
Okay.
I guess we can get Cause it's like, I don't know how much, cause I played the Sega Genesis, but I don't have like a lot on it. We could technically include it in this era if we're talking about the Super Nintendo, because Sega was like all together with that, but I don't have like a lot of time, so maybe we can extend it maybe to like the next time, and then we can talk about the Super Nintendo versus our experience with the Sega. Maybe we can do that. Then we can do that, actually. That'd be a good idea. So we'll do that at that time. But
so then I guess the last question is, so the Game Boy, the OG Game Boy will also be its own separate, right?
Ooh, yeah, I didn't even play the OG Game Boy. I did have a Game Boy Pocket though. So we can include that in the next one too if you want to.
Okay. Because like that's honestly where like a lot more of my, like, as being a military brat that's moving not even like every 3 years at that point, like, because we pretty much went where our mom went and she was always on the move. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of my life was pretty much more the Game Boy than even the Sega, than any of the consoles up until I would say maybe the Game.
I think that could work because, like, with this particular podcast, and this was the first time we were doing something like this, we were talking about news a lot at the beginning of it. So, like, this time we can, kind of continue on. We're in the NES transition into Super Nintendo, and then in the next episode we'll go to Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Super Nintendo, Sega, Game Boy, maybe Game Boy Color we could fit in there. I don't know if you want to go to the portable, but I guess the portables would be the in between the Super Nintendo to the 64. But at any rate, there was a game actually that I just remembered us having that we used to play the absolute shit out of. It's called Rad Racer. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. I'm gonna see if I can pull it up on stream right now. Here it is. So Rad Racer, this fucking game right here, this was the shit. Like, me and my dad, like, every year, like I said, once a year we like bring out the NES and we'll just play that shit for like a couple months straight. And like, I remember we played the crap out of Rad Racer, dude. This game was like, oh my god, I might have to play this on stream sometime. But I remember like us like staying up late at night trying to beat this freaking game, dude. I can't remember if it was, of course a game's gonna be hard to me because I was a kid, but I don't know how hard it is now that I'm an adult and I have other games behind me or whatever. I don't know how hard this game would be. Another game I had as a kid, we had Simon's Quest, for better or worse. Oh god. So yeah, that was I have experience playing Castlevania. Not a whole lot, but I have some experience playing it. So yeah, it's oh man, that fucking game. And I'm just glad that years. Huh?
Red Racer or Simon's Quest?
Simon's Quest. And it's just funny because it's hilarious thinking about it because I was so lost playing that game as a kid, and I just thought, man, this game was super hard. What am I gonna do with myself? I don't know what to do. Only for them to actually only for Angry Video Game Nerd to release his first video on YouTube with his Angry series or whatever, and it was literally that game. He talked about how like that game was just crazy or whatever, and it was hard and loose. You can't even tell what the fuck to do. And I'm glad that I was the only one that felt that way when that time came.
I mean, NES games are especially that generation where, like, I don't know what to do. Did you read the manual? Why? Oh.
Or did you have Nintendo Power? Oh. Because a lot of games relied on you, like a Simon's Quest, for instance. That game had most of its hints were in that. It was in a Nintendo magazine, which was kind of hard to get your hands on, I believe, back then. So, cause you had to have those like mailed to you or something. So
yeah, well, you could buy them at the store, but it's always kind of you'd have to know it exists. So that goes into like a whole agency conversation. Yeah. But even when I bought Nintendo Power, like, I never really bothered with the guides. Wait, I'm blanking. Did I already mention the hotlines?
No, you didn't.
Yeah, there was like the Nintendo Helper hotline, which also existed, where like, if you're ever stuck in a game, there were actually people, like, it was a call center for helping you with video games, essentially. And I would say that was kind of revolutionary at the time, especially considering internet wasn't mainstream yet. So like, you couldn't just jump on a game facts where like Joe Schmo 53, who spent like the last 200 hours and 10 years of his life knowing how to do a perfect jump in Super Mario Brothers speed runs, you get them. like, you know.
That's very
People need
interesting when you think about it. You'd have to have a good bit of games under your belt unless they put you by departments of games, but there's so many games. Like, you'd have to know exactly what the person's talking about in the exact time. But I guess you probably got like a guide or something in front of you, so you can just be like, oh, let me read him off this guide and tell him, oh, you're on, tell me which part of Mega Man you're on. Oh, Airman, yeah. So what you do is you just let him hit you, and you hit him and pray to God you kill him first. There you go. You got it.
Wait, where are you stuck at? Airman. And then they just start playing that song, I Can't Beat Airman.
I can't beat Airman, even though he wasn't that hard, but yeah.
Like, you can't beat Airman? Well, pick a god and pray.
Pick a god and pray.
But yeah, they did, like, just like regular hotlines, even nowadays, they did have a guide sitting by them, so they would have to be somewhat versed in knowing how to play games, but at the end of the day, it was just like turning the page or printing out the sheet that they needed to explain to you how to beat.
Yep. And then there's the so how do you feel about the design of the NES in general? Like, I'm pulling up a picture now for everyone to look at real quick if I can get a hold of this picture here. So we have a point of reference, if you will. I guess this will do. But I pulled up a picture here of the NES. So like, how do you feel about the design of the NES?
Well, I have more imagination in my one pinky toe than you have in your entire bodies. Well, that's good. No, all you need is a box. It's a box.
It's a giraffe, Eddie.
You just put together two cartoons, actually. But what is it though? Yeah, it does have that retro, quote unquote retro design now that is like aged well enough. But I think it works as far as something iconic. Like, you know, you look at an NES and you go, yeah, that's an NES right there. That right there, piece of beauty, that's the NES, Nintendo Entertainment System.
I really hope they didn't say it like that. I'm pretty sure they didn't say it like that.
I mean, you don't know. You were there. In all 10 million family homes across the entire globe.
So here I brought up a picture of the NES here on screen so people can look at it right here. Look at it! Look at it! No, but yeah, so
I want all of you to look at it.
So I don't know. I've always liked the oh, I love this song playing right now. I believe it's from Ninja Turtles. Yeah, it's from that Ninja Turtles game. Like, we were out in the day. Song is fire. Ninja Turtles has some fire ass music back then. But absolutely though, I love the design of the classic NES. It's so simple, but it's like classic. No pun intended. It's like classic. It's classic Nintendo. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just a box. It got the Nintendo Entertainment System logo on there. You have I think this button was to open this thing, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. This tray. I actually almost broke our tray on the front there when I was a kid because like my game kept pissing me off. So like the way it worked, for those of you guys that never had the NES, is you pop open that little tray in the front. You can't see my mouse right now on there, but like you open up that tray where the Nintendo system is, where the Nintendo symbol is, and you put the cartridge in and you push it down in there, and it like kind of locks in. And when you think about it, for that time period, that's actually pretty amazing technology, and it just sits in place and it reads it. And I remember I had a game I was trying to play and it wouldn't work, and I kept blowing it and sticking it in there and slamming the damn thing, and I was getting pissed off. I think I was like 3 or 4. My parents like threw me out the way and like fixed it or whatever because I almost broke it. Because like I said, all my family members were avid gamers, dude. Like I said, my mom and them were hogging the games from us to the point where they ended up buying multiple versions, not versions, but they bought multiple consoles basically. So like what happened before I came along, because obviously I wasn't around when they got the NES. I believe they had an NES and my sisters had an NES, and then when the Super Nintendo came out, they bought them an NES. They bought both my sisters an NES to share, and then they bought then they bought themselves one too. So my parents basically huddled up in their room playing it, and then everything, and then after that, my sisters would have theirs. I inherited all that by the time I was old enough to game. But yeah, it was crazy. My mom said she was such a big gamer that back in the day, like when she used to live in I don't know, Post or whatever for military, kids would literally come over not to visit my sisters but to visit her. She was the cool lady with the games. They'll come and visit her. She said she'll have boys and girls like all like she's Mary Poppins or some shit, like all over the place in the house, just everybody just in there playing games. You can't do that kind of shit nowadays because parents get in trouble because why are you there with all the kids, or some dumbass kid will try to like rob you or hit you upside the head. You can't do that kind of shit anymore now. But back then, you know, in the 80s, it was like, you know, you could do that kind of stuff without having to worry about dumb shit happening like that. And like,
yeah. If it was a close enough neighborhood, I think you could get away with it nowadays.
Yeah.
I don't want to say get away with it because that sounds wrong, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You could make it work nowadays, but like it does have to be like an intrinsic close neighborhood. And unfortunately, not a lot of American neighborhoods are like that these days.
Yeah. But I just remember the and then, you know, even the controller. I've always loved the NES controller design. This shit looks so good. Like I like that. It's like it's just so simple. But like I guess I like that black and gray matted design on the front of it with the red buttons. All of it just looks so good. Like it's because I like the I think it was a DS they had with that design, and I was super jealous. I think of you or somebody that had that version of it because it just looks so good. I love it. Just even the way the console looks in general. Like I don't know what this. I guess this is the vent for it, maybe on the top with these ridges, but everything about it is just really cool. And the buttons were really responsive at the time. I don't think as an adult I would have liked holding that controller because that controller has no handles. It's just a box and there's no triggers or nowhere to really rest your hand. So I'm sure playing this thing for long periods of time probably fuck your hand up. But as a kid with my small ass hands at the time, this was phenomenal. And they ended up fixing that by the time they got to the Famicom, aka the Super Nintendo. As you know, the Super Nintendo controller, which I'll show once we get to that part of it, has a actually it looks a bit more ergonomic, or it's getting there, you know what I'm saying, as far as the design goes. But sorry, I was rambling for a while. You can go ahead.
No, that's I think one big thing that does make the difference is that like because it's what we knew of and we didn't know there were better ways of comfort, that like we wouldn't really be as bothered by its square boxish design of the controller. I mean, not this. I was trying to figure what else to really add to it, but you pretty much like hit the nail on the head for the majority of it.
Yeah, man. All I can say is this thing wasn't like I said, I didn't grow up with this like in the 80s and when it came out. Like I said, in fact, if anything, I grew up more on the Super Nintendo than this thing. But I'll definitely say that I thoroughly enjoyed my time playing the NES. Like when I was able to get my hands on this thing, it was phenomenal. Like I said, we had just about every game you can imagine. I think we had almost every game almost. Like unless it was some kind of special thing or something. But yeah.
Oh yeah, and like especially for we wouldn't have known because we weren't of that generation. But like if you did happen to grow up on like playing Atari games, then like it doesn't matter how trash the NES game would be, it would straight up be a cut above the rest compared to Atari games, which was like still 8-bit but even more trash for lack of a better word. What was also cool was that it was like at the time was one of the most authentic ways to get the arcade experience at home, even though in retrospect we realized that a lot of the NES versions of arcade games were like more or less D-makes. Like the Pac-Man that you thought you were so good at, turns out that's not even the real, quote-unquote real Pac-Man. That's like a lesser Pac-Man on the NES. And like every other game that also existed, Nappy, Dig Dug, like anything you thought was an accurate representation of the arcade version is not, because like arcades were more than 8-bit at the time by that time, but the NES could only do 8.
So Viv actually posted in the chat, he was curious, what do you guys think about the hype surrounding Super Mario Brothers 3 at the time of the NES and the NES era? So again, I didn't get to grow up on Super Mario Bros. 3 in the NES era. Like I was saying earlier, my experience playing anything past Mario Brothers 1 was actually on Super Mario All-Stars for the Super Nintendo. So I played like the up-res version of it. But like just a quick recap, I was talking about how I played Mario Brothers 1 when I was younger and how it like kind of basically introduced me to the layout in which video games would have to this day. Or like I said, World 1 was simplistic, sunny skies. You go inside the next stage, you go inside the cave, and you're like, what the fuck's going on? You transition from that. I kind of like figured out about the pipe thing pretty early on because I was just experimenting. Fought Bowser. I was at Bowser's Castle and I was terrified. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I had to slowly figure out to get to the axe and, you know, body him and shit like that. But I'm aware that during the time of the 80s, like, oh, I wish I was around when Mario Brothers 3 first came out, because the first time that game was like super like publicized, if I'm not mistaken, was during that, or even shown for the most part, was during that that movie they had where they were doing the speed runs. And I remember watching that movie as a kid, and but of course it was a rerun for me because, you know, I was born in the early 90s. But I believe we did have Super Mario Brothers 3 on the NES. I believe we had that at home. I'm pretty sure because I've watched retrospectives of Super Mario Brothers 3 like recently, and I'm aware of how much that game just kind of turned everything on its head, especially going from Mario Brothers 1 to Mario Brothers 2. You know, Lost Worlds, which is hard as fuck, and, you know, it didn't even come to America. We got that other version of Mario Brothers 2, which is a little off kilter, and then back to Mario Brothers 3, which brought things back and it made it even better. My experience playing Mario Brothers 3, I'll say in the Super Nintendo version, I'll say was amazing. That game was phenomenal. I love playing it. It was hard for me as a kid to play it, but yeah, man, it was awesome.
Yeah, I think because, like, again, I also wasn't old enough to know about the hype at that time, but I mean, the fact that Super Mario Brothers 3 is still, like, compared to Super Mario World in the debate of which one is the best Mario game of all time. Personally, I think it's, you know, Super Mario World, but, like, I can see how there would be so much hype. Like, by that time, you knew Mario existed. He more or less was, like, the Mickey Mouse of gaming, and pretty much still is to this day. So, like, if you were one of those people growing up and paying attention, I think, yeah, the fact that Super Mario Brothers 3 was coming out would have been one of the most exciting times in your life, in your gaming life. Like, you know, before we knew even more, like, the Switch existed and all that other. I wish I could remember the name of that movie, because I know what the movie you were talking about, but I can't remember the name.
I don't remember either. I remember watching it on TV because my dad had it on in the kitchen, and, you know, back then in the kitchen we didn't have like flat screen like we had now. You had this fucking small ass CRT TV, freaking like kind of like tethered to the wall, sort of. It was so weird in the corner, and then, like, you know, the screen quality was awful because it was like the early 90s. But I remember sitting in the kitchen watching that movie, and now I was like, wow, they're actually playing a video game in this movie. That's crazy. And I remember it was like a speed run contest, and it was like it was awesome, dude. And that was actually the first presentation or the first preview of that movie for us in America. Not movie, of that game in America for us. It was crazy, dude. Yeah, The Wizard. It was called The Wizard. Yeah, that movie was amazing. I remember watching that as a kid. But yeah, other than that, we kind of went over a good bit of the NES here. I went over Rad Racers, which is a game that's memorable for me. So I guess my last thing for you, DT-Faux, is that what game, and I guess I got some people in the chat too, for everyone. If someone said NES to you, what is the first game that you think of? It doesn't have to be your favorite game. When you think NES, somebody's like, hey, NES. Like, what's the first game that pops in your head?
I think Mario more or less defines the NES, because Mario is Nintendo. Like, probably Mario Brothers 1 specifically, but any Mario at that point, because, you know, Mario is Mario, and Mario is Nintendo at this point.
Okay, the OG Mario Brothers. I say for me, just out of memory, it'll either be Mario Brothers, because I had the Mario Brothers / Duck Hunt. We had that edition. And then I'll say that or Rad Racers. One of the two. Or that Olympic game, track and field. One of those three games, I'll definitely say. Oh, no. Wrong. Ninja Turtles. That's what pops in my head. That game, when I was younger, I would literally hook up the NES just to pop Ninja Turtles in, dude. Like, if somebody was just like, locked NES, Ninja Turtles, like, that's like the first thing that comes to my mind. It's like, oh my gosh, I love that fucking game. My mom still remembers that game. I talked to her recently because I was asking her, like, it's so weird how, like, I end up becoming like this gamer guy even at my age, and like I wonder where I got it from. And she's like, you got it from me, duh. She's like, I remember playing that NES Ninja Turtles back in the day, the one that you loved. I'm the one that bought that, remember? I was like, oh yeah, I remember that now. But yeah, But yeah, that Ninja Turtles game was pretty awesome. But yeah, are there any other questions surrounding the NES and the era of NES before we move on and lightly touch on the Super Nintendo before we start wrapping things up, because we're like a little over an hour now?
Well, is there enough time to talk about the Super Nintendo at this point?
That's a good
Or you
point.
think that should be saved for another episode? The only last thing I was going to mention about the NES was that one thing that constantly feels like a fever dream that I have to remind myself was that the NES did get a revision in the US where it was like, I think called the Top Loader.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember seeing that?
No, I don't. I don't remember the Top Loader.
Yeah, check it on. Well, you can just simply Google it, and you'll see that it kind of looks like a more traditional gaming system, where that, like, rather than doing the cassette insert for the games, you would just plop it down like a Super Nintendo. And I think it came out either close to, if not after, the release of the Nintendo. But I've only seen it like a couple of times in real life as far as someone who actually owned it. But it was always that kind of thing that you kind of forget exists, like in the same way where, which one? Super Mario All-Stars, you know that you know that in Super Mario All-Stars there was at least one cartridge that had a Super Mario World in it. But like, you could never really see it truly exist or remember that it truly exists.
So this is what we'll do. We will do the we're gonna do Super Nintendo / Sega next week, and then we can also go into like the Game Boy if we have enough time. We can go into the Game Boy / Game Boy Color era. We may just end up having to put that into its own episode as well, more than likely. We'll just play it by ear, you know what I'm saying, like we've been doing right now. I think this was a pretty good start. We went over the news at the beginning, so we didn't get to really have enough time to just throw in the Super Nintendo stuff like we wanted to. But yeah, man, do you guys ever look back and try older NES games in recent times? Like, did you already answer that, or?
I feel like I must have. Like, I tried some of them, but like some of them age so poorly that it's either just like not really too fun to play, or if it's especially a very popular release, or one that was very successful, it probably had a remake by now.
For
like
me, the
Metroid Zero Mission.
Sorry, go ahead.
What's that?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, that Metroid Zero Mission, like that's the one I played to get through the original Metroid story that released on the Game Boy Advance. And like, with the release of that, there's almost no point in playing the original Metroid aside from just reliving that blast from the past.
Yeah, I'll say that I haven't. No, that's not true. I do play NES game. I play Mega Man all the time, so that technically counts. I go back and play Mega Man's 1 to 1. I play not 1. Holy shit, not 1.
Yeah.
I play 2, 3, and 4. And pretty often, actually, very routinely, I play those games. There's some more games that's like been like that's been released via collection for, and I'm sure I played. When they had the NES Online thing, I was playing a lot of those games again. I was playing them online against AMP on there. I'm trying to remember. Oh, Kirby's Adventure. I play Kirby Adventure pretty often, actually. I was actually just telling DT-Faux about how I ended up getting my hands on Kirby's Adventure as a kid. As a kid, I was able to get a hold of I already told the story already, but long story short, I picked when I was like around maybe like 13 or something, 12 or 13. I picked up a copy of I wasn't 13 because the Game Boy Advance, I was like 8 or 9. Yeah, I'm tripping. I was like 8, 9, or 10 or something like that, which is past the NES era. I ended up picking up Kirby's Adventure because I was really hyped up for Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, basically, long story short. So that was the time me actually picking up a NES game, like kind of later on when we were past that era of things. But yeah, definitely those games I've replayed. I play Mario 1 every now and then, and I played Lost Levels recently too. So yeah, I've gone back and played some of those for sure.
Yeah.
Like
in fairness, sorry, what's up?
No. In fairness, what?
Like those games generally have aged really, really well. Where like, those are some of the games you can actually get away with playing the classic version of, and like not really feel too much of a difference or feel like, what's a waste of time when I could be playing XYZ.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's all I got to add.
That's all I got too. And I guess we'll go ahead and start wrapping things up because I've been summoned sort of. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in.